Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is trusting life and its unfoldment, allowing that whatever's going on here, there's a bigger picture that we don't necessarily have access to. And what does it look like to allow ourselves to participate in life, sort of holding this polarity of whatever the immediate concerns are in our lives, and also recognizing that there's a bigger picture that we don't really have the capability to even perceive. Anyway, it should be a fun conversation. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. It's so great to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started, let's take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we're talking about trusting life. And we often encounter experiences in life that are devastating, that are difficult and challenging and heartbreaking, or just painful. And even in the space of those moments when we're called to respond, we're called to action, or maybe just feeling incapacitated. Even in those moments, it's possible to allow ourselves to step back and perhaps recognize that the unfolding of life is something beyond our understanding. And I guess this is a conversation about perspectives, because when we're in a situation, our experience is often very constrained and bounded by the impact of that experience on us personally, right? Like we're immersed in our own pain, our suffering, our reaction, our thoughts, our beliefs, looking at the circumstances. I mean, we can be looking at the climate crisis, and we could be just devastated by what's occurring and feeling like it's irreparable and that it's the end of the world. And I think that it's probably accurate to say that it's potentially the end of the world as we know it. And if we take a broader perspective, human beings are one species on a planet of millions and millions of species, and our history here on this planet is just a fraction, the smallest fraction of its long history. And so what we're talking about is scale in perspectives, and to recognize that we don't necessarily know as much as we think we know, right? That we have this hubris around our primacy and our importance, and when we take a broader view of things, we're maybe able to gain some distance from our personal experience, to recognize that there's a greater picture going on. We might not understand it, we might not know where it's going, but sometimes, to me anyway, there's some comfort in being able to step back and recognize I don't know what the bigger picture is. I don't know what is, what the purpose, if there is a purpose, of all of this is. I don't know all the intricacies of what's being created and what's being generated, and on a grand scale on the planet, or in the cosmos for that matter, right? I'm oddly comforted by that not knowing, because I can look, for instance, at what's happening on the planet with global warming. And the thing is that the planet has gone through many kinds of climatological changes over its lifetime, and extinctions, and we were calling this the sixth extinction. But life has evolved and emerged and transformed on this planet, and the geography has changed, and there are cycles to things in the universe. And maybe I'm strange in that I find that comforting, to recognize that whatever destruction we might be bringing upon the systems of the planet, it's unlikely that that's going to be of any permanence, the destruction that we create. And that maybe even in a larger scheme of things, it's even less relevant. So this notion of letting life unfold, letting life, being present to life's expression as an evolution, as a system, as a thing that has its own intelligence that is greater than our own. Somehow I find that comforting. And it doesn't mean that necessarily helps you through your own personal tragedies. We get to hold these things at the same time, holding polarity, like we have a call to action. I'm not saying that this is a call to complacency or anything. We have, when we connect to our core, when we're connected to our heart and to our deepest essence, then we're called into action. And to particular expressions that are in alignment with our essential being. And that call from our heart and soul, that is letting life unfold, that is being in service to life and to our unique role within this greater orchestration. If so, the notion of orchestration implies intelligence, and more as I experiment with this experience of being life expressing itself as an identity, you know, like who I am is life expressing itself through this unique vehicle. It allows me a very different perspective and experience of wonder, actually, to be able to observe that, to be able to see it unfolding as life expresses itself through me and through you and through everything around us. The notion that life is expressing itself through us connects us to everything else. And this notion of orchestration is an ode to the intelligence of life, that it is this constant feeling out and feeling through and adaptation and modification and transformation. And the more connected that we are to our own alignment, the purer an expression we are of life's intention. At least that's what I'm playing with these days. Not saying it's true, try it on, see if it works for you. But for me, it's an ever deepening inquiry to be allowing for life as an intelligent energy or an intelligent impulse that is shaping the emerging world. And Rosalind says, life expressing itself, like a flower doesn't need to be told what to do. Yes, I'm the right environment. In the right environment, the flower will bloom. So what is human nature? Trust that will unfold. What kind of space is needed for the human to bloom? That's such a good question, because, you know, as we look around, it's really quite obvious that there's a lot of pain and a lot of suffering in the world. And I guess the question is, what does it mean to bloom? Because plants and people adapt to challenge in an environment. Like a plant that grows with no wind, no breeze, whatever, is not going to gain the strength in its stem that it needs to be able to remain upright. So there's a certain amount of challenge and what's the word? Well, I don't know, obstruction's not quite the right word, but some difficulty, adversity, some level of adversity in order to create resilience and strength. So I remember years ago there was when people were very germ phobic and trying to create these germ-free environments, and the result was that the people that were cultivated in this kind of germ-free environment had no resilience to natural I'm going to say adversaries, but that's not, natural challenges to their well-being, that a certain amount of exposure to dirt or germs is something that strengthens our system. We create a resiliency. And without that, there's not that strength. So the challenges that we confront are challenges that can help us grow. It brings to mind the statement, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And unfortunately, I don't know that that's the greatest way to live, but I think that there's a lot of truth to it, that we face challenges ongoingly, and if it doesn't break us, we get stronger typically, right? And so it's a matter of degree always. And even when we feel broken, we can often rise from that brokenness to a state that is transcendent, transformative. Like that, whatever it was that created that brokenness is actually the source of our strength. If we get to the other side of it. And so would we want life to eliminate those challenges, or can we recognize when we stand back and see the bigger picture that those challenges were essential in shaping us to be what we came here to become? And so when we're going through difficult times, if we have the ability to trust life, to trust life's unfolding, even in the midst of the pain or the anguish or despair, to allow that it's unfolding in its perfection, even if we don't understand it, there's a degree of comfort that can be had from that. At least that's my experience, that I can hold these seemingly contradictory experiences all at the same time. So I can be in a moment of pain and also recognize that there may be a greater thing at play than my momentary experience. And that in our connectedness, all of those experiences are feeding the greater consciousness, the greater awareness. And as we're able to learn and flow with life, that supports that learning and flowing beyond ourselves. Now that may or may not be true. I'm not saying that that's a truth. It is something that I play with, that I endeavor to live into. And as I said, it gives me some comfort. So letting life unfold, trusting life, trusting that we're all here for our unique purpose, even if we might not understand what it is. So, as Rosalind said, a flower doesn't need to be told what to do. And when we connect more deeply with that essential self, we're moved to be in greater expression of that self, like the flower. We're unfolding. We're shifting with the wind, the wind that is prevailing, that may impact the way that we grow in certain ways. And it's in those unique adaptations also that we become more of our wholeness. So I invite you to just explore what it would be like to trust life, even when things look terrible, even in the space of suffering. I think the ability to trust life alleviates a lot of that suffering, because suffering exists when we want things to be other than they are. If we allow things to be as they are, we may experience pain, but we don't have to be experiencing suffering. And I'm thinking of this thought school that I've mentioned to you before. It was interesting. We gathered over the weekend, and there was talk of struggle, and how, again, it was elevating this notion of struggle and suffering. I added the suffering part, but the struggle. And good morning, good evening, Gia. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about trusting life and struggling with something. And I guess I found myself struggling to understand certain things, struggling being kind of wrestling with, grappling with, having, being challenged by. But I think so often the notion of struggle comes with suffering. And instead of the play, for instance, of wrestling, or grappling with something, dancing with something, discovering something. And there can be discomfort in that, and which again can be a catalyst to growth and transformation. All of these processes, joy, sorrow, elation, grief, all of these things, all of our emotions are part of life and part of life's unfolding. And the idea is not to take ourselves out of those experiences, but to recognize that there's a greater picture. And if we are able to step into this place of broader view, that it can allow us some release of the attachment to that particular experience that could be through which we're creating great pain for ourselves and suffering. So by standing back and having this broader view, we can hold both. We can recognize the pain in that moment, and we can also recognize the greater picture. And in doing so, I think we can find a greater experience of grace. And it's interesting because I'm thinking of the word acceptance. And unfortunately, in our general awareness, the notion of acceptance kind of implies a complacency or a lack of action or a lack of engagement. And that's not what I'm talking about. There's a paradoxical way that we can be observing ourselves in action or in engagement, and also be in engagement. And that observing of ourselves can also serve to inform the way that we're engaging, and can create this state of grace or experience of grace, I think. It's funny how paradox is so foundational to this transformational path that we're on, right? To be in it, but not of it, to be both. And in being both, it gives us space to transcend the limitations of just being in it. So trusting life, what's available to us, as we allow ourselves to trust that things are unfolding exactly as they're meant to, including when we have temper tantrums, including when we are devastated or elated, or, to include it all, that all of it is part of life, and that we can trust that there's a greater, maybe ineffable wisdom to life that is beyond our comprehension, and to find some kind of peace with that not knowing. Anyway, that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And I am, as ever, grateful, deeply grateful to you for the opportunity to share and explore and discover together. And until next time.